Hi guys, this week we're going to look at what needs to be in a scene, what you need to put in your scene. Dialogue, characters, there must be conflict. Those are your biggies. They're the easy ones. There has to be conflict. But these are a bit of a checklist that I have inside my head when I write a scene. The first thing, the scene has to be unique. If we've got a scene that shows someone being a villain, we don't need to see them being a villain again. We don't have to prove it a second time. We don't have to prove it a third time. We establish they're a villain, then we get to see villainy. We get to see them act out what we've proven. We don't need to re-establish it. So that is one thing. It has to be unique. There has to be an exchange of information. A character has to learn something. The audience has to learn something. Someone has to learn something. That is a reason. If you don't learn anything, or the character doesn't learn something, because you can have the character know more than the audience, you can have the audience know more than the character, and the character and the audience can learn things at the same time. But there has to be that exchange of information. There has to be a change in the power dynamic. If it's an antagonist-protagonist situation, the scene must change that balance somehow. The antagonist must lose. The protagonist must lose. They may win. There has to be a change in their power dynamic. If it's man versus nature, the man must take a setback. If it's a woman against the world, oppression. There has to be a change in power, or that female character breaks the mold and forces change. But there must be a change in power. You need to have, I'm just going to check my notes, sorry. I'm back. It has to also drive the story forward. If you give your character some information, but that doesn't change the story, that doesn't move the story forward, the scene isn't needed. You can do that in some other way. It has to also change the world or change the character. They can't be the same person at the front as they are at the back. This is a combination of all those things. This is a combination of them learning information. It's them taking a setback or them getting an advantage. These changes the character. The person can't really be the same at the start as they are at the end of the scene. I know you might love this character and think they're the best thing since sliced bread, but you can't do that to them. There has to be a change. I'm not saying it's an archetype change, but if a person walks into the scene stony-faced and then walks out stony-faced, and all we've done is given a piece of information to the audience, it's pointless. So what about if you've got a scene like that? The person, you use that scene just to give that information to the audience. You've got to get that information into another scene. The unique thing, what about if you've got a scene and you're introducing the person as a villain, and you've got this other great way of introducing that person as a villain? Use that in your other scene when you've introduced the person as a villain. You can't have a scene that accomplishes only one thing. A scene has to accomplish as many things as it can, and if it's accomplishing the same thing as another scene, merge the scenes together. If you accomplish giving some information and changing a character, and that's the only two things you achieve in this scene, and you've got another scene over here where you're not giving information to the audience, but you're changing the power dynamic, and you're changing the world and you're moving the story forward, move that information dump into this scene. And now you've got one good scene that's achieving a lot of things. So a quick recap, this is a very, very short episode, 4 or 5 minutes. So you need to have a scene which is unique. It can't be a repeat of another scene. It can't achieve the same things as another scene. Because remember, a scene has to achieve something. So it can't achieve the same thing as another scene. It has to give information. Information has to be exchanged between characters, so the characters have to learn something, or the audience has to learn something, or both, which isn't a bad thing. There has to be a change in the power dynamic. Your character either has to get more power in the story or less power in the story. It has to move the story along. A scene that doesn't get us closer to the end is a useless scene. It has to change the character. As your characters change, as people, as they learn information, they become more informed, as they make better decisions. They can't be making the same sort of decision at the front as they are at the back. They have to be more informed, more astute. They have to be able to change. If these things are all in one scene, fantastic. Now the big test for a scene is if you take the scene out, the movie should fall apart. It should be like Jenga. When you pull that one brick out and everything collapses. No scene should be a waste of time. Film, actors' talent, a cinematographer skill. You don't make a scene that doesn't achieve something. You don't make a scene which is there just for padding. Every scene has to be in that film. If you take the scene out, the movie must stop making sense. It's a high bar. I know it's a very high bar to hurdle, but it has to be there. The Valley, 2 Hot Films in the UK are financing that one at the moment. They're running around getting some cash. I had some scenes at the start of that, and I was getting mixed reviews on the story. Everyone thought it was nice. I cut 11 pages off the front of that film and it sold. Because even though those scenes were great and they were good, you took them off the film and it was still the same film. It was 11 minutes of establishing. I could establish that without those 11 scenes. I had this, family at home. It's a post-apocalyptic type film. They're in their home and deciding to make a run for it, to try to get out of the city and get to safety. Mum's dying and being in the city's not helping the situation. So they go for the run. They have the daughter talk about, she didn't really grieve for her friends. Dad shows himself to be the rough, tough protector sort of guy. Mum saying that she's sorry because she's been so ill that she's delayed their travel and all. There's 11 pages of that. Relationship building. When I cut them off, that was still established in later scenes, which meant all those scenes in the film were actually useless because that information had already been given to the audience, had already been established in the first 12 minutes. Chop them off. So we chopped them off, and their story starts in a car breakdown rather than the whole journey to get to the car breakdown. And we used that opening there to introduce the villain who wasn't coming in for the first 15-20 minutes. It was a bit like the shark in Jaws. You knew he was there, but you never really saw him. So now we use an opening scene to introduce the villain. And we've done that to put the audience ahead of the characters. So it's the classic horror movie type idea where you see a slasher chop people up and then people turn up to their house for a holiday. It was that. We've set him up as a villain, so when he walks into the movie 15-20 minutes in, everyone goes, I know this is going to go really bad for them. That's this week's thing. This week's episode, sorry. The book, Tools Not Rules, where I'm going through the final edit of it. Reading, rereading, having my computer read it to me, so I'm hearing the pacing of the sentences, all the sort of stuff I would do with a script. Going through final edits. That will be available for free when it first goes. It'll be up on Amazon. Amazon does this thing if you put it up for free exclusive with them. It's a good thing. So it'll be available through Amazon. I'll have an announcement video and that will have a link in the description. If you want to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe, hit the bell icon, leave comments would be fantastic, but subscribe and you'll get a notification when that comes out. You could nick over to griffithscreative.com.au and hit the contact us page. Everyone who's in that That sends us an email on the Contact Us page. We'll get an email with the link in it, and they can just click on it and download the book. There's other books over there as well. There is Writing Screenplays with Intelligence, which was the first book, and the other one called Logline, which has been the bestseller. It just takes you through how to write log lines. There's about a dozen ways of doing them. There's examples. We evolve a horror story through different iterations of log lines in the logline book. That's over there as well. Click on that link and go to Amazon and get it. When we do sell books, when we charge for them, it's like buying a cup of coffee. They're $3 or $4. They're not the career. But it's a story for another episode, that you should always charge for your work, even if it's this much, because if you don't charge for something, it actually has no value, therefore it is worthless, and you never want to be considered worthless. Be considered value for money, be considered cheap, but never be considered worthless. Okay guys, I hope this has helped, and until next time, keep writing.